Food and Beverage Magazine Live, bringing food and beverage to life. With your hosts, James Beard Award winner Jennifer English and Food and Beverage Magazine publisher Michael Politz. Featuring leaders in the hospitality, branded food and beverage, and CPG industries, many of whom are Jennifer and Michael's friends in the business. For an informal and informative conversation where friends in the business share the latest intel, ideas, and best practices. Live, juicy inside scoop from the tastemakers, newsmakers, bread bakers, drink shakers, spoon lickers, clam diggers, farms, foodies, and friends of the food and beverage magazine world. Here are your hosts, Jennifer English and Michael Politz.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Jen. Oh, Jen, why is it bouncing like that? What's going on? I hear kickback.
I'm having coffee.
I hear feedback. Now it sounds better. How are you?
I am really excited because, first of all, we're not in the kitchen right now. And usually on Fridays we go in the kitchen, but we have some really serious business to talk about today. And we're going to talk about what's going on in the restaurant world because that's what we do. We're a food and beverage magazine, but you are the author of the Food and Beverage Magazine Guide to Restaurant Success. And we're going to talk about the fact that there are restaurant operators who are persevering. They're opening. There are hotel developers that have already made a decision to proceed with the projects they've already got in the pipeline. People are making business in the hospitality industry. Not that they don't need help. We do. But what this is about today is the restaurant world. And that, my friend, is where you come in. You are Mr. Restaurant.
I am?
Didn't you just write a great book?
Oh, let me show you that again. That's true. I did write it. And it did sell out the first day on Amazon. So that must be something. Somebody must have cared. Somebody must have cared.
So two things that are happening today. Like if I seem a little nervous, it's because two people I admire.
That's not why. It's just we know it's gas.
No, it's very exciting to have. You have to go there.
I always have to go there because this sounds very boring. I'm bored already. I'm ready to go flip to the next channel. We have a living legend, a Hall of Famer. No, I'm talking about our first guest, the Hall of Famer.
I know.
Right? He agreed.
I know.
Right? I mean, if it wasn't for him, there would be no restaurant business in New York City.
Well, listen. So right now in Washington, D.C., the Independent Restaurant Committee is doing a lot to try and get help for operators all over the country. But the first restaurant committee was NYC and Company's restaurant committee that started the first restaurant weeks that now have helped operators all over the country find ways to keep going, introduce new customers to their food and their hospitality, and most importantly, sustain them through difficult times. Who knows better than how to keep a restaurant going during difficult times than the NYC and Company Restaurant Committee Chairman himself, Tracy Nieporent. How are you, my friend? Hello, Tracy Nieporent.
Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Michael. I'm speaking to you today from my office in New York City in Tribeca. Last time we spoke a few months ago, I was home in New Jersey, and we were all shut down at the time, and just opened up. Nobu's been opened up 57 for a few weeks, outdoor dining. Nobu downtown just opened last week. Tribeca Grill just opened last week, and Batard just opened last night. So we're giving it a shot. You know, we basically have until October 31st to serve outdoors. They may extend those deadlines, but as a practical matter, it gets cold in New York, and nobody enjoys Thanksgiving sitting outside having a turkey as the snow comes down. So, unless we can start serving indoors again at some point soon, we may have to shut down again, which is very scary and which nobody wants. Right. I actually had somebody call me from the restaurant committee today and say, why don't we just unilaterally come up with a proclamation that says, as of September 8th or 10th or whatever the date was, we're just going to reopen the restaurants. We're going to reopen, and we're going to take all the safety measures that are necessary because we have a lot of protocols that we're following to open the doors every day. that we adhere to keep things safe and sanitary. But as I explained, we just, in my opinion, you can't just unilaterally do that. I mean, there are rules and regulations, and we're law-abiding citizens, and we don't just make it up as we go along. But obviously, the nation is we'd like to reopen.
Right. So take us there, first of all. Who's keeping you closed right now in New York City? And a lot of people will look to New York as an example of how to best practice their way through this thing.
What's interesting about that, Jennifer, is that in the early days of this, everybody said, New York, it's a permissive place. They have the problem. We don't have it anywhere else. It's their fault. They did something wrong. New York, New Jersey, we had all the cases here. And we had a really tough situation because we were dealing with this for the first time. Like the hospitals, they didn't know which treatment were the best, so we kind of, the plasma treatments and remdesivir, all these things weren't necessarily apparent at the beginning. Now the rest of the country is benefiting as a result of some of the things that we went through in New York. And we were very disciplined for the most part. And we were able to knock this curve down to the point where, it's a functional area now. And our number of cases compared to other places like California, Texas, Florida,
Arizona. What are your numbers on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, I don't know what they are exactly, but it's small. I know it in New Jersey at Holy Name Medical Center, where my wife works. They had 1,000 people at one point. Now they're lucky if they have 1 or 2 cases.
And see, Arizona is still reporting 1,000 to 2,000 new cases a day.
And I think that there was a belief around the rest of the country that this was a problem that was just unique to New York and New Jersey, and it really wasn't going to spread anywhere else. And remember, when I was on with you the last time, I said, I'm going to be like Paul Revere, and I'm going to ride through the streets saying, take this thing seriously. COVID thing, do not put your guard down. Don't act like this is a big joke and you can get by and you're young and you're vigorous and all this other stuff. This thing is insidious, and it doesn't stop at the boundaries of a state. There's no wall that can protect you. So,
and you know this personally because you had a touch of it.
Yes, and I honestly, at least I didn't end up in the hospital, but I was sick as a dog. I had 9 days of 102 plus temperatures, and believe me, you feel lousy. You feel like you want to die, But thank God I didn't get to the point. If I had ended up in the hospital, I'm pretty sure I would not have survived because it was so depressing. You can't be visited by anybody. The only things you see are people with masks hovering over you. It's just, the whole thing was profoundly disturbing in every way, shape, or form. So I take this thing extremely seriously. And it took me really a month after I recovered to get to the point where I could go out of the house without feeling trepidation, just to go to the store. I mean, every time I went to the store and somebody came within a couple of feet of me, I was freaking out. I really was. And, they said, well, you had it, so you don't have to worry now. Well, now they're saying, yeah, just because you had it doesn't mean you're immune. It doesn't mean anything.
Wow, that's got to be scary.
Nobody knows. You could get it again. Theoretically, if you get it again, it won't be as bad. But who knows? I think the part of it that's scary to me, and it should be to other people, is that the flu season is coming in the fall. And if you couple this with the normal flu, whatever it's going to be, we can have a very rugged fall into winter season. So, I want to listen to the healthcare professionals. I don't want to listen to the politicians who give you a lot of wishful thinking because they feel that electoral success is based on giving good news that isn't justified.
Come back to the current timelines and stipulations about ordering. You had mentioned something about a date in October. You mentioned something about a date in September. How do such dates actually impact you as an operator, and what do they actually mean?
Well, I think that what's happened here and in New Jersey, like New Jersey was given permission to start serving indoors, and then they saw a spike in other parts of the country, and they withheld the order. So they brought it back. For restaurants that had ordered food and everything and were staffing at a certain level, it was kind of a bucket of cold water on the head, because it was like, okay, we made these moves with the best of intentions, and now you're telling us we can't proceed that way. We are using PPP money to help pay salaries and rent. All the rest of the risk is ours, food and all the other things that you need. And as a practical matter, I don't see that we're going to be profitable. I think our attitude about it is we're happy to be employing people. We want to get back to work and provide a service. And if we don't make money, we're okay with that. We just don't want to lose money because what's the point of it? But if we break even, and we can just keep functioning, that's fine. And if we can get to a point where we can serve a decent volume of guests, when we open up indoors, whenever it's going to happen, it may be only 25 to 50% capacity. You know what it's like in the restaurant business. It's a dime on the dollar business at the best of the times. In recent years, it's been less than that. So, how do you make a profit unless you can do volume? That's been the beauty of Restaurant Week. While we had a low cost of entry, we were able to do volume. So a dime on the dollar is not a lot, but if you get a lot of dimes, then you're doing okay. So this is uncharted territory.
Right.
We're all in the same boat essentially, and we just have to play it as it lays. But having said that, we want to maintain the best quality we can. We have to really be very disciplined about how we take care of health issues, because if somebody gets sick, it could shut the whole thing down. You can't spreading throughout your staff and then serve people. You just can't do it. So
you talked about Nobu opening up, and then sort of on a rolling basis, it sounds like you've opened your other places. So that suggests to me that when you opened Nobu back up, that you had enough of a positive reaction from your customers, the neighborhood, the community you serve, and the restaurant itself, your guests, your employees, to say, okay, let's do the next one. Talk a little bit about that. And then.
Yeah, Nobu's a unique situation because it's such a strong brand and people love it so much and they support it. And we had a physical space on 57th Street, which is under an overhang, so that it's protected to a good degree from the weather. It's on a street where there's a fair amount of traffic, and so it was, obviously we can't serve indoors, so you're doing a fraction of your normal business, but you're doing certainly. They're generating an amount that would be the envy of many restaurants downtown.
Yeah.
We were a little slower to open because we didn't have as inviting a space that we could use right away. But and also, so many of the office buildings around these restaurants are really empty right now because people are working virtually away from their offices. So, New York, it's very strange. The traffic coming into work every day has still been pretty heavy coming in. I come in from New Jersey, but just being around town, there are pockets where you look around and you say, where is everybody? Is this a movie set? What happened? But the reality is that, so many businesses are closed and so many workers are not in their offices. My son, my younger son, Robert, works for Uber Eats in a corporate office capacity. And they basically said, we want you to work from home virtually. He went to the office to pick up some things, a chair and some other things that he needed from there, but and they're moving their offices near the Trade Center next year, but they basically want you to work virtually from home, I think, the next June. So that's the way they're operating, and a lot of businesses are doing that. And I think it's going to be interesting to see a lot of companies, whether they come back to a physical space or whether they do this more regularly. I mean, to me, I've always worked in an office. I don't relate to the other things. But the New York Daily News and several other newspapers that are owned by that company, they just announced that they're closing the newsrooms. That
wow,
going to have the paper, people will work virtually, and that's how they'll put the paper out. They don't need a newsroom anymore. And
wow,
it just was astounding to me. Pete Hamill just passed away.
Yeah.
Pete Hamill was such a strong personality here in New York and, around the country and around the world. He was a brilliant guy. I had a chance to meet him when they did a shoot at Tribeca Grill once for Burt Wolf's program. Remember, there was a culinary program. Burt Wolf was the host. And I got a chance to speak to him quite a bit. I helped set the thing up. And he was such a nice guy and so intelligent. He looked at you with his eyes and, you felt like, you were the only person in the world. He's a guy he knew a lot of people. He rubbed elbows with other celebrities. But when he was talking to you, it was a one-on-one thing. And he wrote a lovely inscription in his book for me. And I've always remembered that it was 20 years ago this month. And he just passed 85 years old. But, he was a quintessential newspaper guy. So was Brett. who passed a couple of years ago. They did a documentary a few years ago about those two guys, and that's the old school. That's a bygone era that's now gone forever. Newspapers as we know it are just disappearing, and I love the heft of a newspaper. I love getting a little newsprint on my fingers. It's just the way it is. You can do a lot of things with the phone, and you can read a lot of articles, but to me, when it's in print, that gives it more validity.
Hey, Tracy Nieporent is our guest, calling in from Myriad Restaurant Group in New York City, chairman of NYC and Company's restaurant committee, and one of the guys pivotally important in representing the operators, large and small, all over, because the way that they do what they do is so essential to the communities in which they work and make their restaurants and hospitality come to life. They are the purveyors and cultivators of conviviality. Tracy, you opened the world famous Tribeca Grill again last week. Talk about the decision to open or stay closed when you have such a world famous location such as Tribeca Grill and such a powerful brand as Nobu. What are the decisions that went into, do we stay shut for this or do we open back up? Talk a little bit about how that went.
Well, I think, my brother Drew and the managing partner, Martin Shapiro and Agnes Chow, everybody put their head together and they said, we want to get open again. Now, obviously, August is not a very busy month in New York. A lot of people go away, but we had applied for PPP assistance and we did get that money, and we wanted to put it to good use and bring people back to work. It's the 5th anniversary year at Tribeca Grill, so it's a momentous year in our history. And it was very painful to shut down in March when we had to. And all these people that have been loyal to us, so many employees who have been with us through the years, were suddenly out of work. And so as soon as you can get people to come back, you want to do that. And I think we have something to offer. We have good food there. We have a good mentality of service. And, this is, as I said in The Godfather, this is the business we have chosen. So,
hey, now, are there any indoor seating at any of your restaurants, or is there a mix of indoor and outdoor seating?
No, there's no indoor seating. We have the loading docks at Tribeca Grill on Greenwich Street, so we can seat people there. And now around the corner on Franklin Street, we have an overhang there, so we were able to put tables there. So and we put some nice festive lights out in the evening, and so it's very ad hoc. You kind of go. A lot of restaurants are building these big platforms. They're spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 sometimes building these very elaborate sets. And to our thinking, it just doesn't make any sense for 50 to 60 days you're going to be serving. I mean, when it snows in New York or when the winter gets nasty, you have to bring this stuff all in. You have to store it somewhere. And so there has to be plowed. We're in Batard, where we opened last night, we'd gone shopping and we went around the other day. I was up in Connecticut with Drew getting umbrellas and stuff. And then there was some discussion about whether the umbrellas were the best way to go. And, some people are putting seating out into the street, not just the sidewalk. But we have the way the water kind of runs into the sewers and stuff, we tend to get these big puddles in front of Batard, so you really can't put tables there. We're joking that we have tables on the sidewalk and we can see people say, would you like to have a water seat, waterfront seating? You can watch this lake of that, we had big thunderstorms, so a nice big pool of water, shows up there. So we're joking, you want lakefront seating? We can provide it. It's just that happened once before at Citi Field. When it first opened, we had seating that looked out on the field, and there was a big storm and the water started coming in through the glass windows. So we said, this is like the Maid of the Mist at Niagara Falls.
One of the things that I keep imagining is I realize how unsustainable dining outside is in the northeastern part of the country, where weather and other climate conditions are going to impact that severely. I mean, you really are looking at a finite opportunity, and either things are going to get better and you're going to move back inside, or what are you going to do is the question. And I can't help but think, as somebody who grew up in the taxi business, that every taxi could be your virtual, but they're so grimy. So could we get the cabs cleaned up enough that each of them could be like a little rolling restaurant pod? No.
Yeah, that's a thought. we're also, we're normally a 7-day-a-week restaurant.
Right.
Closed, maybe for a few of the major holidays, but now we're open Tuesday through Saturday, and we're just opening for dinner 4 to 9. So we're limiting our hours, and that keeps the manpower at a reasonable level and staffing, and also, I mean, from a realistic standpoint, how many people are we going to get during the day? It's hot, it's humid. Who wants to sit outside? It's
Right.
just,
Right.
in places like Arizona and Las Vegas, where you have year-round dining and you have misters that you set up. I mean, you can amortize the cost over the entire year because it's a constant thing. But for us to open up for a few months to do this and then have to shut it down, I mean, how much are you going to invest to do that?
And you were talking, Batard opened yesterday. Did that roll out similarly to the openings and reopenings of both the Nobu and the Tribeca Grill? Did you feel like you got a little bit of expertise in reopening because of that?
It was helpful. It was helpful knowledge. The challenge we have there is that we have no overhang right now. We have to build something. So we have these umbrellas, which, may or may not sustain us if it rains. I'm not so confident that it will. So it's not as natural a thing. We also have a much smaller space there. And it's a very refined menu that we have there. Now, obviously, we're serving a more limited menu, and we're doing it at a lower cost. So there shouldn't be any barrier to being able to dine there. We're not going to make cost an issue. The whole idea is to get people back into the habit of dining again, and hopefully give people, a couple of hours of peace and serenity amidst the anxiety that we've all been experiencing.
So your son went to Cornell. Another Cornell grad is joining us now, one of the most influential women in the hospitality industry globally. Elizabeth Blau is the founder and president of Blau & Associates, one of the premier hospitality industry consulting firms in the country. She's based in Las Vegas, Nevada, where she and her husband, Chef Kim Cantinwala, operate the Honey Salt restaurants. And in addition, is a very zealous and passionate advocate for independent operators and restaurateurs in general. And her lifelong passion for this industry is allowing her to be vibrantly creative in this time when creative solutions, Tracy, it seems, are very important. We are thrilled and honored to welcome back to the show Elizabeth Blau. How are you?
Hi.
Hey, how are you? We're going to work on your camera. We're going to get you back with us visually as well. I can't see you, but we'll work on that. I want to throw the question to both of you. And while we're working on your camera, Elizabeth, I'm going to throw this question out. One of the things, Tracy, I've heard you say, and I've talked privately to Elizabeth about this as well, is how creative operators need to be dynamic and adaptive to the almost daily changing circumstances of this COVID moment. How much like regular operations is that? How creative do operators need to be in general? Were you always having to be this creative and we just didn't have COVID to blame for it? Was it always important to be this adaptive?
Well, I think you have to respond to whatever's going on in your market at a particular point in time. This is a very unusual circumstance. I don't think there's no template. We've been shut down for 9/11 and we've been shut down for Sandy and different calamities, but this is a whole new, because there's no end to it right now. We don't know when it's going to end. And there's all these protocols you have to go through to prepare to go to work every day, putting on masks and cleaning surfaces and doing all the things that just, some of the things are kind of contrary to hospitality. Your smile, can't see your smile, your eyes have to kind of provide the smile. Yeah. And so, I think that there's things that you have to change, but the principles of hospitality are always there. And that is to provide excellence, to do a good job, to be welcoming, to have high quality ingredients that you serve on the plate, and to have high standards. I mean, that never changes or goes out of style. I'm in awe to be on the same program with Elizabeth, because she is so dynamic and such a good representative of the industry.
Yeah.
and so excellent in what they do. I think in Las Vegas, you have to have a certain degree of flamboyance because it's really expected there. So everything's kind of larger than life and it's on a bigger scale. And all of that is wonderful, especially when it's backed up by excellence in the kitchen and on the plate. I think for, a long time when it first started, maybe there were a lot of things in Las Vegas that were grand, but maybe weren't as excellent as the original concept.
Right.
That certainly has changed dramatically through the years. And I think Elizabeth is an architect of a lot of the reasons.
Right. Elizabeth.
Well, thank you and good morning, and sending you big hugs, Tracy. It's been way too long.
I know. Well, Elizabeth and her husband were very gracious to us when my wife and I were in Las Vegas. I don't know, it might have been 6-7 years ago. We had a wonderful meal at Honey Salt. So
thank you. Well, I really agree with everything that Tracy says. I just have one correction, Tracy. Today it should be about 115, so there are no misters on the planet that can keep you cool outside.
Yeah,
okay. So thank goodness that we're still able to serve inside. Otherwise, pretty much the entire independent landscape here would be shut down because of the heat.
Elizabeth, talk a little bit about how creative and adaptive restaurateurs naturally need to be, and how that might have served all of you during this period of COVID. Is that something that you learned, in your early career? Is it something you learned at Cornell? Is it something that's just a natural part or a necessary part of being an operator?
Well, as Tracy knows, it's de rigueur for us Cornellies to mention it, that we went to Cornell within at least a couple minutes of any conversation. So yes, definitely some of my incredible marketing classes at Cornell, taught us that versatility. But, as Tracy mentioned, there's always some kind of crisis that we're adapting to. But I completely agree with him. This was unprecedented. So to have our guests return to Honey Salt when we could open, to an empty bar and a half-filled dining room. I mean, it was so unattractive when we looked at it, which is, why we came up with the teddy bear idea. When we were closed, and friends were calling me because they couldn't get flour or yeast or toilet paper. Never in my life did I think I would be selling cleaning supplies and toilet paper along with, the most amazing Casa Dragones tequila or Monkey 47 gin. So
right.
It just, we had to turn on a dime. And for us, because we do so much delivery, it was easy for us to do Secret Burger and do these, meals that you could pick up and watch and cook along with us live stream. It's a very innovative company here called secretburger.com that we partnered with to do that, to turn some of our regular a la carte meals into family style. That was all easy and natural for us. But there are so many restaurants, especially anybody in a finer dining category, that the takeout model just doesn't work.
Right.
And so it's just been debilitating. But as Tracy said, half seating and selling, toilet paper and wine, it's keeping lights on, and it's keeping, for us, 35 or 40 people at work and their families, being able to pay rent and buy groceries, nothing more than that. Our landlords are not, for the most part, being cooperative. They're feeling entitled to 100% of their rent, which makes no sense, because in a time of crisis, you'd think your landlord should be partners and be working together, so that we can stay alive, that we can stay afloat, and we could keep people employed. But not everybody's on the same program, sadly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, here in New York, I mean, real estate is a big component of what it takes to operate. And we always said any kind of shutdown that you have, even for a short period of time, it's very disruptive, because you're paying these high rents, and if you have no income coming in, where does the money come from? And they want to be part of your success. They want to brag that they helped make you. But of course, when things go south, then it's all your fault and it's all your problem. So
that's a consistent experience you're having in New York, that the landlords are not being as cooperative across the board. I won't say your specific landlords, but are you finding that that's a common complaint right now for New York operators as well as the ones in Las Vegas?
I think that's going to spell the end of a lot of restaurants that haven't announced yet that they're closing. I mean, it gets to a certain point where, you try to keep these things quiet. They doesn't have to necessarily play newspaper, but when some landlords, I think, came up with different ways that they could kind of defer rents for a period of time for some people. I know some big party spaces and people that operate them that are paying six-figure rents every month. And, they've been closed for months now. How do you make that up? How do you make it up? Because there's no party business.
And again, that's not necessarily something that the PPP or the business interruption insurance is necessarily going to cover.
No, that's right.
Well, but and remember, the PPP, we're going back to March and April. We're in August, moving to September. So as Tracy said, it's utterly devastating. And there's no coming back. And for my colleagues in New York and California, my heart goes out because they can't use their dining rooms. I mean, it's New York City. Look at what's going on in the streets. There's a crisis with the homeless population. There's a heat wave right now. So, dining, outside is a fraction. And so it's not a sustainable economic model anywhere.
If there was something that either of you could say to the landlords who are in a position, because as we all know, landlords, like operators themselves, range from mom and pops all the way up to publicly traded corporations, some of whom can withstand and endure a bit of a financial bit of pain, if you will, more than others. It's a little probably tougher for the mom and pops. Can each of you address a message to the landlords about the realities that you're facing, especially the landlords who can well afford to be a little bit more cooperative and maybe take a little bit of the pain, or share the pain, I should say?
The one thing I would say is that, this is a problem that actually has existed from before the pandemic. I'll give you one clear example. Nobu Downtown, which was Nobu, New York, which opened in 1994 on the corner of Hudson and Franklin Streets, right down the street from Tribeca Grill. We operated very successfully there. The landlord wanted to raise our rent, I think something like 40%, something like that. And it's a limited space. And we just said, no, that's not realistic. And we ended up moving out of there, and we moved down to a Broadway location in the financial district, where we've done fine. The postscript to that story is that space, which we vacated in March of 2017, is still empty.
Wow.
So think about how stupid the landlord is in that case, because they had money coming in every month. We were paying a reasonable rent. We would have paid a little bit more, but not 40% more. And, apparently they felt, it was better for them to hold out for the big deal. And here we are, well over 3 years later, and 3.5 years later. So yeah. Now no one could have predicted a pandemic, but nonetheless, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. But I don't really understand real estate. I think that you'd like to think that they want to be part of your success and they want to be helpful with you, but they want to be part of your success when it shines on them. But when you have a problem, they go away very quickly.
Elizabeth, what would you say to the landlords out there? I know you've been talking about this, writing about this. I know you've been involved in this. We'll work on the sound there. We're not able to hear you. Sorry.
Oh, yes. Well, I was upside down, and now am I right side up?
You look beautiful as always.
I think I would just prefer the teddy bear, Michael. Can I be back to the teddy bear picture? I I would say to the landlords, you're going to have a very difficult time filling hundreds of thousands of spaces that are empty when you have destroyed the dreams of small independent restaurants, families, generational restaurants, ethnic restaurants, immigrant families who've come in here with the American dream to open their restaurant. You will be crushed. And again, if we don't get federal and state aid, the PPP dollars are gone. And so we need help, and we need it immediately. It was very frustrating to see last night that talks between the political parties broke down. And I don't care whether you're red or blue or Democrat or Republican, work together to save the people in this country who have worked so hard to build their businesses, all businesses, not just restaurants. And we have to stop politicizing, and we need to get emergency aid out quickly. And again, evictions, some of the letters that I've seen my colleagues receive from utterly heartless landlords, it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful in this period of time. And again, when you've closed your doors and you're out of business, it's going to be too late to tell landlords, I told you so, because you're going to be closed, and that generation of work and entire lifetime savings is going to be gone.
And it's not like you can just clear out the restaurant and pack up your plates and go home. Some of the fixtures, the equipment, what it takes to open a restaurant is extensive. And if you can't afford to keep it in the location where it is, where are you going to go store a restaurant's worth of cookery and equipment and fryers and ovens? And I mean, the realities of this, the logistics of this are inconceivable. But that's just where we don't want to go. Let's talk about
what's so painful about this, Jennifer, is that, the nature of our business is that we want to give people a hospitality hug, that we want to comfort people. In a time of need, restaurants can provide a wonderful service because people sit down with their family, their friends, their colleagues. They have a nice meal. They talk about the things that are disturbing them. They have a bit of wine. And when the meal is over, hopefully they have a better sense of well-being. This thing has basically taken away a lot of what we can do. We can serve less people. We have to keep people at arm's length. We can't hug anybody. We can metaphorically. We're wearing masks. We're doing a lot of things that are contrary to our normal way of doing things and the things that we have an instinct for. And so we have to kind of just work our way through it. But it's at a time when people really need what we do. It's getting harder and harder to provide it. And I think the politicians are just so out of touch with what's going on in the country. I mean, you see people lined up to get food from food banks. You see people sitting in cars for an hour and it stretches on for a mile. And you wonder, these people are not, these are our fellow citizens. These are people, this is our country right now. And yet you have leadership that just says, oh, it's all going to just go away. Yeah, it will go away. We're all going to die eventually. Yeah. But meanwhile, while we're here, let's do something to improve the quality of life for everybody. Let's wake up. There's plenty of money for a lot of things, but right now we're in a desperate situation where people need help. And
Tracy,
this going forth is, $600 a week is just too much. People are just, they're going out on their yachts with that extra $600. I mean, please, well, we'll make it $400, but the states will pay 25%, and the states all need help, but we're not going to give it. We're not going to give them any help. So, I mean, this is just, it's maddening. It's just maddening. But there's a certain part that doesn't seem to care. I mean, they just keep marching along like lemmings, and it's just odd to me.
Tracy, what's frustrating to me is that when we had the last financial crisis, we said the banks were too big to fail, and there was a reality to that. But to me, the restaurants are too important to fail. And so when you think about it, almost everyone in America, their first job in anywhere is in a restaurant, whether it's fast food or scooping ice cream or bussing a table. You don't have to have a high school degree. You don't have to have a college degree. We welcome with open arms. Kids, get their first job in the summer in middle school or in high school. And there will be an entire gap in the workplace. And it's not just about, the first job. It's how you learn to be an adult. It's how you learn to show up on time. It's how you learn just basic values and skills that you take with you for the rest of your life, because most of those people never end up staying in the restaurant industry. They go on to be lawyers or doctors or mechanics or anything else that they do. But there's a rite of passage in the restaurant industry that's going to be lost forever. Again, I see all kinds of articles and all kinds of people. There's wonderful organizations. Thomas Keller, Danielle Blau are championing the business interruption insurance. The Independent Restaurant Coalition is trying to pull and lobby together along with the National Restaurant Association on our behalf, because we don't have those big, high-powered lobbyists that many other industries have. And so now is the time for our voices to be heard, or they will be silenced forever.
Wow.
I couldn't agree more. I think Elizabeth has articulated that brilliantly. Really, it's the other thing is just in New York, about 50% of the storefronts, ground floor storefronts in Manhattan, are occupied by restaurants and food service. So
wow, that much.
A lot of, and people were noticing in New York that there seemed to be a lot of empty storefronts before all this happened. And sometimes that's just the natural order of things because it's expensive to do business here. But now it's going to really be shocking when you look all around, and a lot of places with big names. Thomas Keller's place, he just closed it, the tack room.
And Bouchon Bakery. And when Thomas Keller closes 2 restaurants, what does that say for the rest of us? I mean, it's devastating. And Tracy, conversely, in Las Vegas, you've been here. Think of every strip mall that you passed on the way from the strip to Honey Salt. There are thousands. And, between the nail and hair and beauty salons and the restaurants and the food service and the markets, mini markets going out, it's going to be a ghost town.
Yeah, it's scary. It's funny that I don't want to politicize things, but the day we opened up at Tribeca Grill, we had protesters. We had Trump protesters on the street with big signs, and we had the naked cowboy who is always playing in Times Square. But of course, there's not many people in Times Square, so apparently he's a Trump supporter. So they were all like surrounding the restaurant, and I was afraid that it might get a little testy, but fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and it didn't get too nasty. But I thought, because of the fact that Robert De Niro has been very outspoken about his opposition to Trump and his policies, they were out there protesting our reopening. That was the reason why. Yeah. Well, don't forget, there was that crazy guy a couple of years ago who sent these pipe bombs to different places, and one of them was directed to us. It was downstairs, and the first mail people fortunately intercepted it, and this guy I think he's in prison now, but this is the world we're in now. There's a lot of crazy people, but we had these people surrounding us, and they were waving their flags and so on and so forth. It's astounding to me. It's astounding to me that after all the things that have happened over this last 3.5 years, that they see that's a way forward for the country. I just that could be a couple of programs. It could be a week of programs where we could dissect every single stupid thing that's happened over the last few years. But all I can say is that we know the president better than anyone here in New York, because ongoing presence here for many, many years, and we all have our degrees from Trump University, and what they're worth.
Tracy, what's really interesting? You talk very eloquently and passionately and personally about the role that restaurants play in the culture and communities in which they operate, and how they're places, bastions really, of true hospitality and conviviality. And it seems to me that bullying is the opposite energy of all of the things that the restaurant industry represents and the hospitality industry offers to our communities.
That's right. That's right. You listen. You can have a vigorous discussion at a table, and you can have a different point of view. And I always welcome. I love a good debate. I have a lot of friends who are conservatives. A lot of people who feel, theoretically, they're more comfortable with conservative policies.
Yeah.
But I would say even a lot of them feel that there's a vulgarity that exists now with this president, and that his principles are based on his own personal need, not so much on what the country needs. And so it's just but I think vigorous debate in this country. The one thing we have to learn how to do is we have to learn how to talk to each other and not at each other. We have to begin to have a dialogue again.
I agree 1,000%.
So we're really privileged, Michael, and honored to have two of the industry's leading voices on with us. Before we say goodbye to each of you, and thank you. What's up?
So I just found out on the newswire that just came through. I'm going to put it up. Simon Properties. We're all familiar with Simon Properties. All the shopping centers all over the country. The CEO, David Simon, is looking now for opportunities to acquire the retailers that are going bankrupt. They're acquired, like Brooks Brothers. So they're putting in offers to acquire the businesses now, so they'll own them. So
profiteering.
Wow, like profiteering, right?
And there will be places where that is heralded as, that's what this is all about. That's what capitalism should be about. It should be about the survival of those most advantageously pursuing that. That couldn't be more opposite from what I understand our business is all about. Do you have a comment, guys?
It's very Darwinian. Survival of the fittest. And it's, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of that, and people who didn't enter into this pandemic with the economic viability to sustain their businesses are going to fail. But the sad thing, it's our business is hard enough, and this is no fault of any of ours, and it's just really a surreal situation to be facing for so many.
I like to think that, in the best world, that you do an excellent job, you show a good work ethic, you put a quality product out, you earn an honest living, that should be enough to be successful. I never believed in the business world when you see all these buyouts and all these things where people are, selling companies and buying companies, and no one ever talks about the quality of what the guest is going to get. Right. Advertising for many years, and I finally got out of it when one agency was buying another agency, and it wasn't that they were providing better service for the clients necessarily. It was just that people at the top were making a lot of money. A lot of people down the line, you didn't need two creative directors, you didn't need executive account management, so a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people at the top. So I don't know. This has been a good business for us to be in because it's an honest business. It's a true business. We get to meet wonderful people and feed them. It's something that we've always enjoyed doing. It's theatrical. It's a demanding business, but it's a lovely way to make a living. But it's getting tougher and tougher. And I think the country, whether it's restaurants or anything else, if they buy Brooks Brothers, hopefully they'll make a better product than what they were making before.
Right.
But if they find a way to cheapen it and just use the name to spread, to make a little more money and something that's half-assed, then that's pretty sad.
One of the things that jumps out, Tracy, in your comments today is the notion that the restaurant business is a dime on a dollar business. But what that really means is that you are so generously sharing and redistributing all of the other 90 cents of that dollar to everybody else in the community that makes this happen, to your employees, to your servers, to your bussers, to your dishwashers, to the fishermen, the farmers, to all of the people involved, the accountants, everybody involved. Everybody has a place at the table in the restaurant business. Whereas if you looked at the matrix from banking, especially big banking, when the recession said we're too big to fail, I guarantee that they were not making a 10% profit on every dollar that they had churning through their system. There were way more, we're retaining that profit than distributing, in other words, sharing that profit. And to me, that's one of the main things that we have to focus on. Yours, ours is a business where we share. It's a powerful moment in time for us to realize, to ask the question, who we are as a culture, who we are as a community, who we are as people. It's just powerful not to notice that we're sharing or we're being greedy. That is just a powerful idea right now.
Yeah, it is. I think you're exactly right. I think you're exactly right. The way we get back as a country is when we start respecting each other and we all work hard and honestly do the best for each other. Whether you're a dry cleaner or a local grocery store, you're doing the best work you can for your fellow citizens and your neighborhoods, and you're showing kindness to people. And it's always, the American people have always been very generous in terms of charities and everything. But now when you have very little money, it's hard to be charitable. You have to kind of put food on your own plate and serve your own family. But when we get back to a kinder, gentler tone, I think that we can start to make progress again. And it's not just the government; it's up to each of us. We have to be better people, and we have to do really good work, and we have to make sure we make people happy, and we're not taking advantage of anybody. Honesty. That's the bottom line.
Elizabeth Blau, we're going to give you the last word on this.
I can't agree more. Some good old-fashioned honesty and kindness. We're a culture that perseveres. We're an industry that perseveres. We are the first people in the restaurant business that every charity comes to for support, whether it's a gift card or a dinner or a chef meal. So we're the first out there to support others. And we need our federal government, our state government, and we need support from the community for all of our local restaurants, all of our independent restaurants to survive. So please help us.
One of the things I want to say is thank you to all of you for the work that you do and the leadership you bring to the industry, your national voices, your local and your own communities, but you do so much nationally for all of us too. Michael, I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite shows we've ever done. I hate the circumstances under which we had to do it, but I love that the idea that this is a reset of and recalibration of reminding us and recommitting to who we are as an industry. This is who we are.
No, we appreciate you guys coming on. I've been spending the last hour watching you guys and watching this.
Hi, Jack.
Because we're doing this. This is who we do it for. We do it for the future.
That's right.
That's right. That's the future. All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Elizabeth Blau, thank you.
That was beautiful, wasn't it?
Powerful.
Powerful. Very
powerful. Listen,
can
you? All right. So Jet, Michael, here's the idea. What if? Hello. What if we gather together all of these coalitions of restaurateurs, and we compete with Mr. Simon? What if we gathered Stone Soup style, all of our resources? You have a dime, I have a dime. If every restaurateur, if every dining patron that has a dime put their dime in the kitty and they said, Mr. Simon, we are not going to let you personally profit and exploit this moment in time, and put the restaurants out of business that support our charities, that support our Little League teams and our Boy Scouts and our Girl Scouts and our charitable efforts in every community. We're not going to let you take this away. What if we found a way to do something where we put our dimes in our own collective restaurant piggy bank and said, Mr. Simon, you're not going to get away with what you think you're going to get away with, because the market will be defined differently than you expect it to be. You are not the only one with enough monopoly money to make this work. Somebody out there is going to come and help us make this happen so that it's not quite the gouging and wholesale termination of the restaurant business that you think it might be. And I put that out there. Let's get our dimes together, boys and girls.
Thank you, Jennifer. Say bye-bye to Auntie Jen.
Hug your kids and count your blessings.
And
Whether you are thinking about becoming a restaurateur or you are already in the business, Michael Politz has written a must-read, The Food and Beverage Magazine's Guide to Restaurant Success. Pick up your copy today at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, or wherever fine books are sold.